Okay, so that's 3 minutes. Hopefully, you've had time to get yourself to the loo. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything. It's past 5 o'clock. I'm sure our tummies are grumbling. um, so I'm gonna get on with it. I've just got a little bit of a few ideas that I want to put forward, and I think Ben's crazy having us still meet until 5:30. I'd have been like, nope, 4 o'clock on the dot, go home, end conference. But anyways, we're still going, and so thanks for sticking around. And since we can have 9 people in the discussion, feel free to press that little blue button, and we can see each other's faces, so that we can also have a bit of a discussion as well. So I think we can run it a little bit that way, because I'm assuming there's not as many of us now, so the bandwidth might hold up. So yeah, my name's Bonnie. I'm a member of VAPS and a philosophy teacher. Yeah, the title of my session is on the embodiment of philosophical pedagogy, arguments for why philosophical pedagogy should be a way of life, not just something you do in the classroom. Although I'm not quite sure I've got any arguments. I'm possibly here maybe to gather more for something that I might write or do in the future. I'm not sure, but I just thought I'd start with a quote from a handout from the Sapere Level 1. If you're not familiar with them, they're the UK version of the of VAPS. So the quote goes, in a world where 35,000 people die every day of starvation, where 1 in 5 are malnourished, and where 16% of the global population controls 80% of the world's GDP, there must be surely a desperate need for reasonable, responsible, informed, free-thinking and active citizens to change this appalling situation for the better. P4C has demonstrated over 30 years that it can be non-partisan and yet give rise to the thoughtfulness that is needed to challenge injustice and suffering. Darren Shetty quoted this when he was analysing P4C in the context of race and racism within P4C. I met Darren in Vancouver at ICPIC conference, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Jeanette, you can correct me. I can't remember how long ago it was. It feels forever. Yeah, and I attended his session on racism in P4C, and it's yeah, I've been thinking a lot about it ever since then. Not so much in terms of race, you know, having privilege as a white Australian, but more so as a woman and as a climate activist. I don't know, maybe that's a bit stronger term. And thinking about how my own behaviour in the practice of P4C and in general as a teacher and outside contributes to both racism and also perpetuates gender roles and possibly even the climate crisis. My numerous trips overseas have certainly contributed in terms of carbon credits there, that I've got quite a few up my sleeve, although COVID has now put a dampener to that one, so I might have a few more back. So this, along with some other experiences in the P4C world, included being treated in a particular way because I am a woman, and sometimes, but mostly in relation to inaccessible ways for me now to participate as a mother, and now living in a regional town, have got me thinking even more about embodiment of P4C and community inquiry in the school and outside. So I've been frustrated sometimes by those who only engage in philosophy and philosophy of education for the sake of it, rather than as a practice for life. I'm a firm believer in the idea of praxis, that is putting theory into practice. And I suppose I've tried to do this throughout my own political activities, but I'm now more and more considering how the pedagogy of community inquiry can also play a role in my praxis. And I've been listening to some podcasts about Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius, and the tension that the tension between the roles that we must perform in our current context and the ones that we wish to perform from the theories we hold. And I've also been reconsidering that the study that I'm not sure I ultimately agree with it, because it sounded rather limiting, but the basis of it was that professors of ethics are no more ethical than any other ordinary people. Obviously, someone like Peter Singer is someone who I look up to, who, even though I disagree with him on quite a lot of things, I do admire him as someone who does live by his theories, even if it is only limited by giving money to charities. Well, of course, and also his veganism. Yeah, that one's not problematic for me, having been a vegan for 24 something years. And then other people like Michelle Soe and Grace Lock-Robin for their work with philosophy and climate. And then Jeanette, who's here, for her constant generosity of mostly unpaid or underpaid work. And I think I've just pointed out to 3 women who do a lot of unpaid work in this realm. And so if one of the dimensions of COI or P4C is about creating a more inclusive community in the classroom, but also outside, as I'm trying to argue. And if we're meant to be modeling these inclusive behaviours in the classroom, then they shouldn't just be for the public sphere of the classroom, but also other public spheres and our private spheres. So going back to that definition, that we're in desperate need for reasonable, responsible, informed, free-thinking, and active citizens to change this situation. I'm wondering what that would look like in the context of P4C and community inquiry, what that looks like in my my day-to-day life. And I suppose to take a feminist position on it, I could come up with a few suggestions, like childcare during meetings. And that's a common practice in a lot of activist groups that something like childcare is provided. I don't know. So anyways, I want to put forward an argument that if we're to be authentic educators of philosophy, to be models to the people we're supposed to be engaging with, then we must also live out our philosophy and hold to those core principles of community inquiry. And that means being consciously more aware of the impact that we have on others and our ability to include or exclude, to think about our language, to think about our carbon footprint, and a whole lot more. So yeah, taking real steps to ensure that we are genuinely democratic, genuinely responsible for our own actions, and step up when others are maybe acting poorly. So that's my little rant, and I actually just want to open it up to discussion. So if you do want to press that blue button and tell me what your thoughts, what do you think the praxis of community inquiry would actually look like in our day-to-day life. And I can see Jenny's put, the quest for truth should always be on the table of life. Yeah. I agree. Jeanette, thoughts?
I do have a thought, but just having come from Klaus's paper, I don't know if others were there, but there was a point there where we were comparing. He described Hume as aphilosophical, and that was because he regarded his work as work you do and you take it to certain limits where you're perhaps it's a kind of nihilistic position, and then work done, and then Hume goes off to the pub to play backgammon and drink wine. So the philosophical activities aren't transformative in a sense. And then he connected it with Sextus Empiritus, who regarded the Stoics rather regarded philosophy as you relieve yourself of all your unjustified opinions, and therefore you have peace of mind. And as Socrates points out, most opinions are unjustified. So the aim of all this activity is to get to this point where you're relieved of concerns about racism, perhaps, or whatever it might be, and you have peace of mind. I'm just tossing these in as to sort of further positions on the connection between praxis and doing philosophy. If it, is philosophy just therapeutic? In other words, ridding yourself of boring over justified opinions, or basically that. I guess that was the outcome. Yeah, the philosophy is actually a relieving oneself of opinion rather than the construction of true opinions, as Jenny's.
I was I'll have to go back. I was listening to one of Grace's talks recently about that, and she was sort of putting forward an argument that that it was the demonstrating the process, even though the claims she was talking about, climate activists, young climate activists putting forward empirical claims, but it seemed that they had gone through at least a philosophical process, and they were demonstrating the philosophical process that they had at least reached those scientific claims. But then, how do you make because we can go out in the world and say, okay, this is what I've come up with, but how do we demonstrate the process? Is that what I'm thinking needs? Is that the praxis that we're responsible for demonstrating how we got to these positions?
Yeah, is that sufficient just to demonstrate you've done it the right way?
I don't know.
Demonstrate a correct modes of deliberation and reflection and so forth. That is more praxis. Or is it the end result, the result of the action that is implied by the conclusions you might have drawn, even if you do admit they're provisional. So if you're reaching provisional conclusions, is it ever right to take action?
Elizabeth's got a few ideas. I don't know if you want to jump in and talk us through them, Elizabeth. I'm interested in what you've said there about inoculating yourself against this. Like, what do you mean by that?
Can you come on board, Elizabeth? Can we see you? Oh, we can hear it. Can we?
No.
Do you know how to make this visible?
There should be the blue button at the top there.
The top of the dark framed screen. Oh.
No. Oh, there she is. Yep, I'll let you in. There you go.
Goody. That's to talk
to. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you?
Good. Thanks for today. It's been really terrific.
No worries. Do you want to just elaborate on what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess my perspective, I'm very new to teaching the philosophy course at VCE. My experience is all in literature, which is all continental and critical theory. But so that's sort of my background. But I feel like whenever we talk about our ethical responsibilities as a teacher, and maybe Jeanette can talk about this more, I assume she's been in the game a bit longer than us, it really does depend on the context of the students and what we teach them in our 1 or 2 classes, or however many times we come across them in their school career, is going to be a tiny drop in the ocean, the ideological ocean or the ocean of thought, and that their cultural context is actually a lot stronger than that. And I feel that even in 16 years, I've seen idealism and subjectivism, which are things that teenagers tend towards, but they've become much stronger in our wider culture, I think, and it seems to influence the way in which students think. So it might sound like a really abstract response to a question of praxis, but to me, I feel like that's the tiny, tiny little thing that I'm trying to give them, with a consciousness of what kinds of things they'll encounter at university and what kinds of things they're encountering in their intellectual lives outside my room.
Mm. I guess my question really is, how do we take it out of, how do we take our own practice in the classroom outside? Like, I mean, what would it mean to, what would it mean to be doing this in my own house?
As far as doing the philosophy or performing actions in one's life that are based in one's philosophical values?
It's a combination of them both, and I guess that's what I'm trying to formulate in my own mind at the moment. Like, the pedagogy and the process, as well as, and the values that are in those, I think, are the ones that we should be living outside of our classrooms as well. But how does the pedagogy manifest there? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Jeanette, do you want to?
Well, I was just going to say it's really difficult when you go into activist groups who are committed to certain goals. That is, they have arrived at a conclusion, and it's assumed that you have reached that conclusion, and that's why you've joined the group, the team. There's generally a lot of resentment about slowing down to have philosophical discussions and to kind of elaborate any points that come up, because the commitment to the goal precludes, generally speaking, reflection. And I find that really, really difficult. It can be regarded as offensive or an attempt to undermine, weaken the resolve of a group of people because you want to explore something philosophical within their positioning.
I guess that's why I think that's why I'm thinking, like, maybe it needs to start, like at home, so that reflective practice is not just one that you say, oh, you go to school and you reflect on your learning, but we should be reflecting at all different points and slowing down at all different points in our life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I think that for me, one of the areas that I have really changed the way that I think about this sort of stuff is in my wider interaction with education research, and I do stuff, and with the education profession. And, teachers are wonderful, but some of the most tribal, non-rigorous, emotional and ignorant argument that I come across is in the field of education research and some of the highly politicized debates that we have. So, I think that praxis might just be disciplining yourself to respond to education research, discussions, policy, curriculum from the perspective of your core values and whether you think it's good for students rather than who proposes it and what the Australian has to say about it. I get the sense that you're thinking something a little bit more personal, but I am a person who tends to abstraction and philosophy.
Yeah,
so that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, yes, and both. But I mean, I've just moved to a new school, so I'm also trying to reinvent myself as a different kind of teacher. Like it's an opportunity. I've got an opportunity to rethink of my, of the kind of teacher I want to be, and so yeah, that sort of stuff resonates with me as well, because I'm in these meetings thinking, well, I used to do it this way, and I've also come with this, like my school did it this way, but I've always had this pedagogy that I've tried to bring to my school, so I've sort of got these three things going on: the new school, the old school, and then community inquiry. And it's just like, how do I keep them consistent, keep my community inquiry prominent, and without getting lost in the new school as well.
As practice goes, my instinct on that is that is a very female and female socialized response to the predicament of being a philosophy teacher at a new school. And the practice, sorry, this is such a weird conversation to be having at 5:30 with people we don't know, but the practice think about our male colleagues in philosophy and the way that they respond to questions of practice and questions of their identity in the classroom. And, how do we hold on to that reflection without being the female teaching martyr who feels that we have to be everything to all students, reflect continuously and do all of that work? But the thing that we often don't do, and that I've sort of always done, and maybe you've talked about experiences of being female as a teacher, is that we can also model intellectualism, abstraction, and rigor, and that male teachers in our area never shy away from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess there was another part that I wanted to sort of put in my little intro, which was, a number of my female friends at the moment are saying we need men to step up and start, doing, speaking up at a basic level, but I think also doing that care work. I can just think of little examples like, some of the things, there's a number of my male colleagues who have been always good at this, but others that have just, let Jeanette and I wash all of the dishes after a conference, sorry?
You got a long memory.
Just stuff like just that sort of stuff. And so I guess I don't know if you've read much of Darren Chetty's work, but his is about the veneer of, or maybe not veneer is the right word, but that there's a whiteness about P4C, and he thinks that can't be overcome. And I'm just also wondering if there's an element of gender also to it. And I don't mean it in terms of necessarily the theory, but I do feel like the actual praxis part, that I think that it is gendered. But I also think that that's also our industry, that there's predominantly women. But I'm just thinking. I don't know. Has anybody else got any other thoughts? There's a few other people still hanging around. I've got 4 minutes to go, and I do actually, talking about the role of women, I do have a 2-year-old out there gagging for some boob. So
I'm just thinking, we've got, I've worked with the Asian Pacific group, and we've got a children's discussion group coming up, which there'll be children from China, Japan, Korea, so everywhere where there's no white, except there'll be a couple of Australians involved.
Right.
Maybe not white, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just thinking, in this case, there isn't, it'd be interesting to see whether we can still nonetheless talk about, I don't know, with the colonization or Western influences, a white in particular kind of overlay. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I mean, there's obviously issues between different countries, South Korea and Japan and Chinese, they've all got their views on one another already, but that won't be framed in terms of the white.
No.
Coloured thing at all. anyway, this is something to look.
Yeah, I don't know what Darren would have thought about, how he has thought about that. I do know that some people from Africa have engaged in his work and have talked about race and racism.
It's within Africa or combined ethnicities.
I'm not sure. I've only just seen the paper. I haven't actually gone to have a read of it.
My memory was it was of say African children in a largely how do you use white context.
Maybe I'd have to go back and have a look at that particular article.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm speculating.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, it's 2 minutes. So for those who are still with us, thanks for a fabulous day. We look forward to hopefully seeing all of you, at least most of you tomorrow, if you can make it for the second day of the conference. It's starting in the morning with Thomas's presentation, and should be excellent. So hopefully we will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening and take care.
Thanks, Bonnie.
No worries, Jeanette. Bye.